If you look at some, kind of messed up bugs that are floating down the river, they're probably not perfectly symmetrical and perfectly tapered. And, the stuff that you think looks good to you may not be what looks good to a fish, right?
All right, guys. We're back. It has been a long time.
Been a while
since we've released a podcast, and it's been a while since Adam's been on.
We got a little busy.
Both
of us got a little busy with some things.
Yeah,
that you guys are going to see about.
Yeah, we've got a lot of cool stuff in the works, and we actually just got back from a bull trout trip up in Idaho, kind of in the backcountry up there, which was so much fun. We actually recorded a podcast this morning about that trip.
Yep,
but that's not going to come out with Bryant. Bryant's not here anymore.
Yep. Going to be released with the video, right?
With the video, which will be in September, kind of mid-September, hopefully.
Perfect.
And, yeah, we've just been grinding.
We have been.
On videos and other projects. And just have not been able to make time for the podcast, unfortunately.
Well, hopefully, kind of in the off-fishing season, if we're not fishing as much, maybe we can do some more podcasts this winter. It's
so funny and so ironic that I get so busy. Like, I guess both of our businesses are so busy in the summer. And
yes.
I'm filming the majority of my videos when the fishing is the best, right? Which is in the summer.
Yes.
Which also means I have to edit in the summer.
Summer.
So it's like, dang it. I don't know. I got to figure out a way to just film everything and just say, guys, I'm not going to release a video for
releasing this until
month.
Later.
Give me a month.
Yeah.
Go film, fish, and then in the winter. But it's just,
I mean, we're the busiest in the summer. People are buying flies, get stuff's happening.
You guys been crushing it?
Yeah, just been crushing it and having a lot of sales. But all through the summer and then in the winter, it's kind of like, well, what are we doing? What do we do?
Always out of inventory.
I mean, there's so much there's so much stuff that you got to game plan.
Yeah.
We're never slow, but definitely our orders slow down.
Yeah.
But, crazy.
Yeah. So we're finally back, and we wanted to do an episode. I know last time I was here in Salt Lake, we did a Q&A podcast, and one of the things we said was we wanted to do a tying podcast, kind of on tying, fly tying, and you guys really wanted to hear that. And so I am someone who does not tie that much. Very novice tyer.
Me too.
Yeah. Blue Line Co. is just, you don't do
novice company.
Novice company. But I don't do much tying, so I thought it'd be a good opportunity for hopefully me to learn, and then also you guys learn as well on some of the stuff that Adam has done over the years. I mean, I'm not a dummy. I know a little bit, but I'm kind of a dummy.
Not saying I'm the authority on fly tying, but I tie a lot of flies, I guess.
You tie a lot of flies. I've seen your office. It's a mix of a camera and computers and fly
flies. Materials just all over the place.
Everywhere.
I actually got a comment the other day. Someone had a bunch of loose bucktail in not a bunch, but like some loose bucktail in a package that I sent them. I got a comment about that. Nothing mad. They just thought it was funny. There was a bunch of loose bucktail that had gotten stuck to one of the flies they'd ordered.
Yeah.
And they was like, man, I thought the fly was like coming apart for a second until I realized that was just something left over on your desk from when you backed it.
Just finished tying and you got all this stuff.
Whoop, here we go. All right, next order. Order up.
Whoopsies. Squirmy material. But I think kind of starting like from the top. So, someone that's completely new to this, new to fly tying, what's like a good starting point? Where do I start? I'm interested, I'm starting to get into fly fishing, or maybe I'm not into fly fishing yet, and I just want to get into tying. And what do I know? Where should I start?
We get that question asked a ton. So I've answered this one quite a few times. And just even before I go into that, one thing that I think is interesting is I actually have quite a few people that reach out to me that like to tie flies but don't fish, which I don't know how many of you guys are in that camp, but more than I thought, because I really thought the natural progression of everything would be, you start fly fishing, you start getting a little better, start wanting to tie your own flies, and then just kind of keep that progression going. But I've got people who don't fly fish, aren't really that interested in fly fishing, but just enjoy tying. And I answer that question quite a bit, like, hey, I'm interested in getting into tying. The first place to start is to get the correct materials and the tools that you need. So we get asked a lot, like, what do I buy? What toolkit? Is there a good kit to buy for tying flies? The answer just is no. There's not. There's not one on the market that I'd recommend. For a couple reasons. Number one, obviously I love tying streamers, but that's not just big streamers. That's, I fish a lot of warm water species. Nobody that I know of makes a warm water species fly tying kit. So all the fly tying kits that you see from Cabela's, Bass Pro, they're all trout specific. And on top of that, they're, more like tying a Copper John or an Adams or maybe a pheasant tail. It may not even be, or maybe a woolly booger's pushing it for a lot of these kits. So I don't like a lot of the kits. I think that you could do a whole lot better by getting the tools that you need and nothing that you don't, and the materials that you need for each individual fly that you want to tie. And then eventually you'll start getting those materials built up to where, as you see, a lot of these fly recipes use a lot of the same materials. A lot of nymphs use a lot of the same materials. A lot of the dries will use same materials. A lot of streamers use same materials. So kind of just start getting a vise, getting the tools you need, and then buying the materials to tie a few patterns to start with, maybe even one pattern to start with at the time, and then just start building it up from there. Get comfortable tying that woolly booger. Maybe then try woolly booger that's a different size with a different color. And then maybe try tying a clouser, just for examples, Yeah. So I think that's the best way to do it. The other good thing with that is that, I know obviously you talk to a lot of people, get asked a lot, I'm trying to ball over here on a budget. Help me out. Like, I want to get into fly tying. Obviously, the entry barrier is a little expensive because just like with fishing, though, you got to have a rod, reel, line before you ever can go fly fish. Same thing with tying. You got to have a vise, the tools, the materials before you can ever even tie one fly. You've bought quite a bit of stuff. So my best recommendation for that before you buy anything is to either try to borrow or try to go to an event where maybe there's some people fly tying. Maybe it's a trade show near you. A lot of these trade shows, fly fishing shows will have some signature tyers. Maybe it's your local shop might have some tying nights. I know when I worked at a shop, we had some fly tying evenings. You could go take a class, or even at that point, maybe there's just a beer evening or something that a local club is doing near you that has some fly tying going on one evening that you can maybe go watch, go join in on, or ask a friend, maybe post something on Instagram. Like, hey, reach out to someone on Instagram in your area. Hey man, I'm looking into getting into fly tying. Would you mind if we just did a quick fly tying night? I'd love to give my hands a shot at tying flies before I just go buy all the gear. So that's one of the things I hear a lot is, the cost of entry is a lot. And to do something I've never even done before, right? It's not like, oh, hey man, can I just borrow your fly rod? Or hey, let's go fly fishing and I've got a spare rod. Most people don't have a spare vise and a spare of all the tools and materials for you to go tie your own flies. So that'd be one of my biggest recommendations. Reach out to a local club, local shop, something like that, and see if they have a tying demonstration to go to. One of the biggest things that I have against those kits is that the vices are all terrible. As good of a fly tyer as I am, I still have trouble tying on those vices that come in those kits. Used to have to do it for teaching classes and stuff because we tried to, at the store that I worked at, we tried to sell people subpar kits. I didn't like to do that. And so I told people how terrible the vise was in the class. But I tied on it during the class. And, the little C-clamp with the little thing that just sticks up,
Yeah.
You've probably tied on one with the little arm where it's just like
Yeah.
Terrible.
But it
doesn't spin. It's the cheapest thing on the planet. Those cost like $20. If you try to get into fly tying, you're going to get extremely frustrated. I think personally, at least the way that I operate, I would be extremely frustrated with that, and it would make me want to quit tying flies. Because I'm not saying again, I'm not the best fly tyer on the planet. My flies work, but I'm definitely not the resident expert on how to do everything the best in fly tying. But
that's a good point. Is these flies, we always run into this. These flies don't need to be pretty.
Right.
A lot of these flies just need to look decently buggy.
They just need to work.
Yeah. And
they just need to catch fish.
You don't need the perfect looking bug every time. Or
that's definitely a point we'll get to for sure.
Yeah.
But you're wasting your money on those kits. The $20 vise that comes in those kits is a joke. Hop on eBay, Google, whatever, used vices. Try to pick up a decent vise. It's going to be the most expensive piece of fly tying, single most expensive fly tying thing that you're going to have is a vise. And the good ones, you're going to hate it. They start around $100, it's unfortunate, but it's the way it is. I would not recommend anybody use those $20 to $30 vise, the little C-clamp table vise. It's not worth your money.
It's not worth it because I feel like even if your budget is very low, you're gonna buy that and it's not gonna do anything for you.
You're gonna waste.
You're gonna have to buy another one eventually.
Right. You're gonna waste that $20, $30 that you did spend on that vise.
So maybe wait a couple weeks, save up a little more money from your job.
Yep.
And then go and buy the nice one.
So then once you have that, the other thing that I love about instead of buying a kit, most of these kits cost $150, $200 for everything. It's a lot more manageable if you start out and just buy it all individually. And I don't think you're getting a very good deal. I don't think the discount is very good buying it all as a kit. You buy the vise for $100 to $150. The best starter vise is the Renzetti Traveler. Hands down, it is the best starter vise. I think it's $160, $150. You might be able to find it with a coupon for a little bit less, something like that. At a local fly shop, might have a sale or something. But that's the best starter vise. So get a good vise, but then instead of spending $200 on a kit, you spend $150 here. Maybe next month, maybe next paycheck, you just set aside a little bit. Next time, you go buy your tools. You don't have to go buy the most expensive tools. You can buy a very basic bobbin. Again, just going back to me, nice bobbins are nice, don't get me wrong. But I can tie just as good of a fly on a cheap bobbin as I can an expensive bobbin. Bobbin is holds your thread.
I think I like the ones that you can control. The ones I have, that you can control the pressure, the tension. That you can loosen it, you can tighten it. If you can just find one of those, I don't think there's a huge difference between especially if you're starting out, between a decent one and a really nice one.
Right. I agree. $10 bobbin. Those Wright bobbins are great. That's the best, probably the most famous adjustable tension bobbin out there would be the Wright bobbin, Rite. If you can find one of those, maybe even, again, on sale, maybe Amazon, something like that. It's got a good deal on them. I don't know. Check your local shop. They might be able to hook you up with one.
Support your local shop. Don't support Amazon.
Support your local shop.
But
if you live like out in the middle of nowhere and you don't have a local shop,
there you go.
Maybe Amazon's got them for a good deal, something like that.
I will say, my friends at Due South Outfitters, shout out to them. I know they have offered in the past discounts for people, and they'll help you build a kind of a kit like you're talking about for what you need.
Exactly.
And so no matter where you are in the country, I think reaching out to your local shop and saying, hey, I want to start tying these, or go in there, I think they'll help you out and pick out like a kit, so to say. Yeah. Instead of buying just a generic kit.
Tell them what your favorite flies are. Walk in and say, hey, man, I love fishing the purple haze.
Yeah.
I need the stuff type.
That's all
haze.
I fish.
That's the only thing you need to fish. Mm-hmm. That's honestly the only fly, really. Everything else is just a joke. Mm-hmm. So,
should we just end this then right now?
Yeah. All right, guys. We'll see. Yeah. If you go into a local shop, any of the people I think would be extremely. I know if I had someone come in, I'm obviously very enthusiastic about fly tying, but if I had someone come in and said, "Hey man, I'm interested in fly tying," I would always be like, "Yes, here we go. I got one. I love doing this." Yeah, but I mean, most of your local shop would be more than happy to help hook you up with the gear that you need to start tying the flies that you will fish. That's the other thing is you're going to get so many materials in one of those kits that I would never, ever use. And if part of it is because the quality of a lot of it is terrible because they cut so many corners building those kits that you might buy that you, I mean, I wouldn't use either because I don't like the product, the quality is terrible, or it's the wrong color. It's all the bargain. The stuff they put in there is all the stuff that's not really going to get used or get sold or whatever.
Because I don't think
leftovers.
It's hard to know when you just get a kit. Like, what do I do with all this?
Yeah,
you get all these random materials,
and you're so overwhelmed.
Yeah.
There's so much stuff in there, and they give you such little packages that the stuff that is good that you need, you could tie 2 or 3 flies of.
Yeah,
I remember I saw the store company that I used to work for had a kit that I used to see every once in a while, and it said like on there, "Oh, you can tie Clouser minnows," right? Which great, that's what we need to tie for bass. I want to learn. That's like the number one fly that I think you should learn how to tie. One of the first streamers you should go to. Clouser minnows. The bucktail section that they gave you was so much garbage that you just needed to buy another bucktail and throw away what came in it. It was so bad.
Yeah.
And if you're trying to, I mean, I just know myself, right? If you're already kind of frustrated, you're like, man, this is I mean, the learning, like I said, the entry level barrier is tough. So you're already frustrated. You're trying to get this thing to look right. And I mean, I know we shouldn't, we're going to go into it, but like, you shouldn't compare the flies that you see to the stuff that you see on Instagram or the videos of how to tie something. You watch a fly tying video. You shouldn't compare your flies to it, but you're going to. Everybody does.
Yeah.
And you're looking at your Clouser minnow and you're like, man, that looks so bad. Why is... And then you're frustrated and you're mad. But half of it might even be because the bucktail that they gave you in that kit is just garbage.
Yeah.
That I would look at and I'd be like, no. Just throw it directly in the garbage.
We're not going to...
Like, I'm not even going to use that.
Yeah.
So that's my 2 cents. I'm just one person. That's my personal opinion. That's where I started. That's what I used to tell people when I worked at a shop. That when I used to try to get people into fly tying, just because I love the sport, I love fly tying, and I'm extremely passionate about fly tying.
Yeah,
that's what I would recommend to people. I've had a lot of people I think come back and be really, really happy that that's what they did.
I think when you're starting out too. And this is with anything, but especially with fly tying, it's all about those little victories. So if you go in trying to tie a big articulated streamer as your first fly,
don't do that.
You're going to be so overwhelmed. You're going to quit very, very quickly. I started trying to tie, I think, woolly buggers, which wasn't bad, but
not a bad starter.
It was a big fly, and I think a little tougher to get into when you're just trying to figure out.
Sure.
So I think start with some nymphs. Just start with some thread midges.
A zebra midge is going to be the best thing, and it would cost you to get all the materials like $6 maybe.
So cheap, and you could whip out like 100.
Yes, with what you buy. I mean, your limiting factor on a zebra midge is going to be the bead heads that you buy because they just come in packs of like 10 or 25.
Right.
That's going to be the limiting factor on a zebra midge.
Mm-hmm.
But you've got your thread, a hook, a bead, and then wire. And that's it.
Yeah.
You'll get used to doing that motion, that thread wrap motion. Watch some beginner videos on how to do some of these techniques or whatever.
I think too, a lot of times when I started, I would wrap towards me, and then I learned from some of my friends, you always want to wrap away, which seems like common knowledge, but at the time you're just whatever.
I don't know. I'll figure this out.
Yeah. But I guess, why do you think, probably should have gone into this first, but why do you think that people should get into fly tying? And like, why have you enjoyed it so much?
I feel like there's a little extra piece of a reward that you could get from catching a fish on a fly that you tied more than a fly that you purchased from a store. I mean, even that being said, I still buy a lot of flies, but I think I think it makes you think a little harder about what you're gonna fish. It makes you think about some stuff while you're sitting at your fly tying desk, and not just when you're on the water. Like, what kind of bugs are you trying to imitate if you're trout fishing? Maybe what kind of bait fish maybe are in your creeks, or what kind of crawfish live there. I think it kind of gives you a little extra it almost forces you to become a little more knowledgeable about your fishery, which I think is cool. And if you're one of those guys, I mean, I'm not a big part of the fly fishing thing for trout, especially like the entomology and the bug life. I'm not big on all that. I mean, I see a caddis, and that's caddis, and I see a mayfly, and that's mayfly. But I can't tell you, I can't tell you everything in the world about them. Mostly because I don't fish them. But
normal nymphs only.
Normal nymphs. Squirmy worms hatch all year.
Squirmy worms hatch all year.
No. So, I think, but tying flies kind of forces you to think about a little more of that. Like, okay, I'm going to tie. I see a lot of caddis on my river, right? Okay, I'm going to tie some cased caddis. If you're seeing caddis flying around in the air, they're obviously caddis nymphs underwater. Whether you are looking down flipping rocks over or not, they're there. So, okay, great. I see a lot of caddis in my river. I should tie some caddis, or I like fishing caddis, or maybe I've just had success on caddis. So, okay, great. I'm going to tie a couple different life cycles of a caddis. Maybe, right? You tie a nymph and a merger and a dry fly of a couple different caddis. So I think it kind of it almost forces people to think a little more about the sport and about what the fish are eating.
Yeah. And when you're coming up with these bugs, a lot of times, are you I guess more so starting out because you know so much now, but are you seeking out, ways that people have done in the past? Or are you just kind of looking at the bug and trying to think of what materials would work best that you have available?
I think there's only a finite limit. There's not infinite fly tying materials, right? There's a limit on how many on putting these materials together in this order to create a bug. And definitely I've created flies sitting at my desk, and then it turns out later it's like nearly a identical copy to a fly that already exists. So personally, when I'm doing it, I'm looking at what materials do I like, and what materials will create a look or a function or a form or a body or a shape, something like that I'm trying to accomplish. More so than, well, how does everyone else tie a caddis? I'm going to tie a caddis that way. Obviously, if you guys, you love fishing an elk hair caddis, that fly just freaking works, right? I mean, we could all agree. Oh, yeah. Elk hair caddis is so catch fish. Then great, put together elk hair caddis. But even then, what could be cool? I mean, I've seen a bazillion colors of caddis when I was on the river, right? You go out to Montana and you fish. That's might be a different kind of looking and colored caddis than what you might see in North Carolina. I'm sure you have experienced that. So that's just what I think is cool about fly tying, is you could really dial in and be like, okay, the caddis that I have on my river are a light tan. They're not like the caddis gray or the brown or the black. The ones that I have are like almost like look like a moth, like tan. Well, great. Run over to the store, buy some tan colors, and then tie you up some caddises that are the exact color and size of the ones that are on your specific river.
Yeah. I think it helps too if you take pictures. If you ever, see bugs out there and you can grab them, take a picture really quick.
Yeah.
I've done that before for certain dry flies, or even bugs that I find under a rock or whatever.
Yeah, flip it over.
Just gives you an idea.
Take a couple pictures.
Maybe put your hand in there so you have a little reference of the size.
I tell you, a lot of times, and my wife has commented a lot on on my tying desk sits my computer for my work computer. I don't have two separate, like a packing desk and a tying desk. I just have one desk that I do everything from. So I always, when I'm tying, if I'm tying, kind of a trout pattern or maybe even like a crawfish or a bait fish, I always have on just Google Images. I'll just sit there and type in caddis, fly, whatever, right? And it'll pop up. And a lot of times you'll see the caddis flies that they'll show, will be fly lures. I don't like to look at those when I tie. I don't like to look at flies when I tie. Fly fishing lures when I tie.
Right.
I like to look at the bug. So if I'm tying caddis or if I'm tying crawfish or if I'm trying to imitate a gizzard shad, I want to pull up a picture of that bug or that fish or that salmon fly or whatever I'm trying to do. And I'll have a real life, like more of a scientific image of that bug, and I'll try to replicate that. And that's what's worked for me.
Yeah. That's good.
But starting off, if you're, obviously that's not very good beginner advice, I guess. If you're starting off, pull up a picture of, or just go run out to your shop. Still, I can't tell you how many flies I buy. I buy so many flies. Run out to your shop and just buy the flies that work for what you're using them for. Like if you say you're going to go fish the salmon fly hatch. Or you could Google them if you don't have a local shop that sells them. Google, salmon fly fishing lures, and just tie some of the recipes and see what they look like. See what looks good before you just go out to Idaho and fish the salmon fly hatch or Montana. But probably wasn't the best beginner advice what I just gave as far as what I do. But you did ask me what I do. That's what I do.
Yeah, no, that's good. So I guess besides obviously a vise, when you're going in and you want to get you're wanting to start getting some materials, right? To get going in fly tying.
Well, tools. You'd have your vise and tools.
Yeah.
So you're saying once you
so
have your vise.
What other tools do you think are really essential
that
you use, and why do you use them, or what do you use them for?
So essential, you need a bobbin. That's the piece that holds your thread.
Right.
You know that. We already covered that. You need a really good pair of scissors. By really good, I don't mean you have to go buy the $70 pair of fly tying scissors. $15-$20 is fine. But put the money, like you cannot use craft scissors, or you can't use some scissors from Walmart. You do have to buy fly tying specific scissors. Dr. Slick makes some great ones that are pretty budget. Loon also makes a fantastic budget pair of scissors as well. Buy a budget pair of scissors. $20 is all you need. I really like to have a pair of tweezers. I use tweezers for a lot of different things. That's a good one you can just pick up from Walmart. I've spent a lot of time in the women's makeup section at Walmart. That's a good one. Just pick them up at Walmart for $1. Or however much pair of tweezers is. That's a good one. Great for picking up hooks, little beads, little materials, separating some things.
Especially if you're working with midges.
Yes, fantastic. So grab you just a cheap pair of tweezers. I like to have you already have them, but I use them quite a bit. The pliers, just hemostats or pliers, whatever you might use. You probably already have a pair. Everybody makes a pair of them.
Yeah.
The hook remover pliers that you'd have in your fly tying.
Forceps.
There you go, whatever. I have a pair. I just keep a pair of those on my tying desk. I end up using them for a lot of different things. Another one I use a ton is called a bodkin. That's the needle. A lot of them have a little grip with it almost looks like a really skinny nail almost. I have
and that's for.
You can use it as a dubbing pick. You can use it just to separate out some materials or legs, poke holes in foam. There's not one specific use that a bodkin does. It's just I use it for a lot of different things. If you're wrapping hackle and hackle's getting stuck, you can use that bodkin to pick it out. If you're making a rope or anything, a little bodkin is a fantastic piece. We don't have to go in. We can go into a separate thing later if you guys want to. But I also made a fly tying tool myself that I use quite a bit.
Yeah.
It is a popsicle stick.
Oh.
That I have super glued on one side a piece of Velcro, and on the other side a magnet. So it's popsicle stick, about this big. Velcro on one, magnet on the other. The sticky side of the Velcro, not the coarse side.
Was it the soft side? Then?
No, not the soft side. The rough.
Okay, the
rough side.
Yeah.
The little magnet helps you pick up beads, hooks, little stuff, especially if you tie a lot of small dries or little midges and things like that. The Velcro side helps to kind of brush things out with hairs, loose hairs, things like that. You can really brush them with that. That's, again, another cheap tying tool that you could make yourself. Just get a little piece of Velcro somehow and get it on something you could utilize. There are some companies that make a tool that is exactly what I just mentioned. I just have a popsicle stick.
Cheaper.
Handmade.
DIY.
The DIY. I stained the popsicle stick.
Oh, dude,
I sanded it down. But just trying to help you guys, pinch some pennies out there.
Hell yeah.
But that's still what I use. I like it better than anything you can buy. Another thing that I like to have, because I do spend quite a bit of money on scissors. Having a really nice pair of scissors is big for me. I would have that craft pair of scissors, a cheap, shitty pair of scissors. Mm-hmm. You could buy a pair from Walmart. You could buy a pair from whatever. But if you say, for example, if you're tying up some zebra midges, you need something that'll clip that you want to maybe cut that wire with that are not your nice scissors.
Right.
Or what I use a lot for that would be a wire cutters. I found a little cheap pair on Amazon that was like $4, local Home Depot or Walmart. I'm sure we'd have something similar. Just ones that are kind of spring loaded that you just clamp and then they open right back up. Mm-hmm. They're wire cutters is all they are. But I use those for cutting rough materials like, wire, hackle off of, if you need to cut a hackle stem, I'll just use those instead of scissors. Obviously every single time you use those scissors, they get duller. So I like to utilize those scissors, at least myself. I spend a lot of money on scissors. So keeping those scissors as sharp as possible is big for me. Mm-hmm. I don't think you need a pair of hackle pliers unless you use a lot of really small hackles, things like that. You'd have to figure that out yourself. But I don't think you need a pair of hackle pliers to start. For years, and a lot of times, if I ever do a tying demo, I forget those. I don't ever remember to bring them. So I have them on my desk. I have a pair that I do like. I use them so infrequently that I don't think you need them. Last would be your whip finish tool. So that's obviously for you guys that may not know. You tie the very end of your fly. You tie a knot called a whip finish to finish the fly with. This tool just helps you tie that because it's a pretty complicated knot. And a whip finish tool would be the last thing that I might have.
A lot of my guide buddies will just do it with their hands.
Yeah, do it with their hands. Yeah. Or a half hitch as well, which is just making an overhand knot where you make a loop around the fly. If you just look up an overhand knot or how to fly tie a half hitch, you can certainly do, maybe 2 to 3 half hitches and then just a little dot of super glue or glues or whatever to finish it off. If you don't have a half or a whip finisher, you're not sure how to use one.
Got it. So,
but pretty basic.
Yeah.
I mean, that's not a lot of expensive tools, but that's what I would have to start, and then I would add to that as you need it.
Yeah. Just to have your base at least to start. So you kind of have an idea of the tools, you kind of have an idea of what you need just for technology wise to start tying.
Yep.
So I guess now going into more, all right, I want to start tying. What sort of materials should I be tying based on whether I'm tying dry flies or streamers or nymphs? Yeah. I think it's all tailored to what you're trying to tie, but what do you think? I guess let's go through nymphs. I think we're going to go through the best material.
Nymphs, streamers, and dries.
Like the 5 best materials, I'd say, to start.
Yeah.
For nymphs, then we'll go to dries, then we'll go to streamers.
Yeah, that makes sense. I get asked that a ton. So yeah, I'd love to answer that.
Yeah.
For the dry flies, if you tie a lot of dries, you need a deer or an elk hair. A lot of flies utilize a deer or elk hair wing or the floaty part of your dry flies. You can do a lot of different things with it. Elk hair caddis, utilizes elk hair. Deer hair and elk hair, it's pretty, I don't know, some of you guys may, especially the dry fly nerds that might be watching this are going to disagree with me. I use deer hair. I don't ever buy elk hair. I just use deer hair because I have so much of it for streamers that I just mostly use elk hair or deer hair, and then I just use floating.
Elk hair is pretty hard to work with, isn't it?
Sometimes it's a little longer. It's kind of expensive. The hairs are generally more hollow, so it is technically should float better. Meh. I don't know. I've got so much deer hair.
Yeah.
I just use deer hair.
Well, there you go.
Yeah, so there you go. Deer hair or elk hair, if you guys, specifically, if you're like, man, I love fishing stimulators and elk hair caddis and things that have a deer hair or an elk hair wing, maybe buy that little swatch of elk hair. But I'd buy, something along those lines. I think deer hair is more versatile across fly tying world than elk hair. But I'd have that. Definitely maybe a couple colors of dubbing. I love dubbing because it's cheap. You can buy, a little package of dubbing is only a couple bucks. It adds up when if you add a bunch of it to your cart on your fly fishing website. But I would have a couple colors of dubbing in the colors that you like to fish. Do you like to fish a purple chubby? I'd have some purple dubbing. Do you want to fish like a gray, kind of that natural colored Adams? Have that, natural gray colored dry fly dubbing. I would have some dubbings of my favorite colors that I like to fish. Yellow, I fish a lot. Yellow stimulator. That's one of my go-tos. A yellow
great
dubbing
or what do you call it? Target.
Yeah, a tractor pattern.
Tractor pattern. Yeah.
So I'd have some of those. I would have some foam. I'd tie a lot of dry flies with foam, not only because I'm lazy, but foam floats, right?
Really well.
People at home. That's a hot take for you guys at home. That's why you come to the Wildfly podcast. You're gonna get hints like that.
That's why.
I buy a lot of my foam from Hobby Lobby. I don't mess with or Walmart, whatever. I don't mess a lot with the fly fishing foam. It works. I don't know how much better, more durable it is on stuff like dry flies. I'm gonna lose a dry fly maybe in a tree before I ever.
Yeah.
Especially I float a lot too, right? So off my boat. If I cast a chubby in a tree, I'm not going to row halfway across a river, maybe, to go get it, right? I'm just probably going to, hopefully that comes off.
Yeah, and if not?
Nope, whatever.
Oh, well.
So I use a lot of Hobby Lobby, Walmart foam. You could buy one sheet of thinner foam, and that would tie roughly 400,000 chubbies. I don't know. Y'all fact check me on that. But I'd have foam in whatever kind of color you like. I've seen people use foam on stimulators as the wing instead of elk hair caddis. Chubby is one of the best dry flies on the planet, as we know. Mm-hmm. Grasshoppers, things like that. I fish a lot of terrestrials, beetles, ants, all that stuff utilizes foam. What am I at, 3?
Yeah.
You want to add one?
So I guess obviously
what do you think?
It's pretty basic, but you need thread. So thread color would be probably something that you want to get. The thread. Like, what size thread are you usually using? A thinner thread, or a medium kind of thread, or are you using a thicker? What kind of thread are you usually using for a dry fly? For dry flies.
We can go into it. I was going to bring up thread. We can go into it now. I only have 2 colors of thread. I have black and white. That's it. I never tie with any other color. I shouldn't say never. Sometimes if I'm doing something a little more advanced, a grasshopper or something, I tie with one color thread. It's either black on a dark fly or it's white on a light fly. But white thread and a pack of Sharpies is every color of thread under the sun. So that's what I do.
Do you color your thread the whole time?
No,
as you go,
because most of the time your thread is covered by your materials,
so
right?
You wrap your thread
at the very end of whatever you're going to see, right? Like you see a lot of stimulators that might have, or nymphs especially, that have a hot spot.
Yeah.
Right? I'll use a white thread for that. We'll do the body, everything. We'll get to the end. And say you're using hot orange or maybe a hot pink thread, right? Maybe like a Rainbow Warrior. A lot of those might have like a big pink hot spot. Right at the very end, I would take a pink Sharpie or like a red Sharpie or whatever kind of color a little piece of thread, do a couple thread wraps, whip finish, done.
Nice. Yeah, I didn't.
I only use black and white thread. That's it.
That's smart. Budget friendly too.
I've had a ton of colors of thread. I at a point in my life, I would go into a fly shop, be like, oh, that's kind of a cool color. It's like a gray green. That kind of matches like maybe a grasshopper I might tie one day. Dude, all that thread just went bad, and I literally when we were moving from Alabama to Salt Lake, I threw away probably $200 worth of thread.
Yeah,
I was just like, oh, this is trash. Because I bought it and never used it. Or maybe tied like 2 flies with a spool of thread.
Sometimes it goes bad too. It'll break on you.
It'll break and get brittle. I don't mess with that. As far as sizing goes, I honest to God, I found a thread that I like, and I don't use any thread that's not that. It comes in a couple denier sizes, so it uses the denier scale. If you're not familiar with it, it's just go small to big. 50 would be a small, 100, 150, 200. Are the sizes that this thread is sold in. It's called Vise GSP. That is the only thread that I use. Got it. And I have like probably fit 20 spools of each size in black and white downstairs. And that's it. A couple exceptions. My squirmy worms, I do have a couple spools of pink thread because the body on the bottom is, you're going to see all of that, right? So instead of using a pink Sharpie and coloring the entire thing, I do that. My salmon fly, I do have an orange thread that I like for that because I do a segmented body. Same thing. Just take a lot of effort to go in there and Sharpie all the thread that you're going to use for that.
Those are the ones from the first Idaho trip, right?
Mm-hmm.
Short Diaries trip.
Yep. That I do tie that with an orange thread.
Those are a lot different than the ones that I've bought in shops.
Yeah, it doesn't actually look like a salmon fly if you look at it.
Yeah. Works though.
It works.
It got some fish.
Yeah, I mean there's stuff there was times that we couldn't catch a fish that wasn't on that fly.
Yeah. It's so cool because I remember tying those flies the very first short bus trip on a Yeti cooler, which was our tying table. And
on the tying desk.
Now we've got a legit
have a full-blown
tying station in the bus that you guys will find out and see very soon.
I'm so excited.
I'm
so excited to have a real fly.
Moving up in the world.
We really are. We're really getting fancy over here.
Have we made it?
That's how you know you made it. It's when your short bus has a fly tying table.
Graduated from the Yeti.
Yeah. So thread on those per the denier scale, I normally use like a 100 for those for dries or nymphs. That'd be the thread. I don't know if we would include thread as a material. That's more of a this is something you just have to have. I mean, if you're starting out, I just buy a spool of each. They're not super expensive. I just have a spool of each. Mm-hmm. Have a spool of black. Have a spool of white.
Yeah, yeah.
And then a pack of Sharpies, which you probably have some laying around anyways.
You probably have some. I definitely have some.
Yeah.
Super cheap. You can go buy
Walmart.
Target.
Yeah, Walmart sells a 5-pack of Sharpies that I probably buy 5 or 6 times a year.
Yeah, yeah.
Yep.
So I guess again, it all depends on really the flies. You know, obviously it's kind of general. The flies that you're trying to tie, but I think of simple ones as elk hair caddis, stimulators, chubbies, maybe some sulfur, some CDC.
A lot of stuff you said would be hackle. You need hackle for a lot of those. My favorite, I love grizzly hackle. Good grizzly hackle just makes me happy. Mm-hmm. So I'd probably, say some hackle. You don't have to spend a ton of money on hackle, but get something that's pretty decent. Whiting's they have a lot of different tiers, but Whiting's name, that's kind of like saying I bought the cheapest Ferrari, like buy the cheapest Whiting that works for the colors that you like. That's what I would do. Okay. I'll use a lot of Whiting's hackle stuff, or if there's any just sort of dry fly hackle at your shop would be fine. So hackle would be my fourth, and then fifth.
Maybe some rubber legs or something.
Yeah, some small rubber legs. I still use if you're talking like a lot of very universal materials, which is one thing I like to talk about for people that were trying to tie flies and getting into it, is a material that you can use for a lot of different purposes. EP fiber. because all of the wings that I do
That's your stuff.
is EP fiber.
The Hudson caddis.
The Hudson caddis.
Wrecked in Idaho.
Oh, it always does. The Hudson caddis has just been dirty this year.
Yes.
And it's got a lot of EP fiber in it. So I might do like white EP fiber. If you tie a lot of streamers, you probably already have it laying around. If you don't, when we get to the streamer section of this, that's going to be my number one. It'd probably be like some EP fibers. The white EP fiber floats super well. It doesn't hold water. It absorbs any of that. We just call it grease. I think you call it something else. I don't know.
Like
floating, whatever. Well, we always just call it grease.
Kerosene, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah. But that Loon Aquel is one of my go-tos, and man, that EP stuff
It's laying around here somewhere.
it's around here somewhere. That EP stuff soaks it up so well and just doesn't sink. So if you're going to do a chubby, you're going to do some wings, you're going to do something like that. I love that.
So you would do almost EP over elk hair or deer hair for a lot of your dries. Do you find that
if it utilizes foam, I probably do EP over it. Just like the chubbies, the white wings on the chubbies. I wouldn't tie a stimulator with it. I mean, you could.
Yeah.
I'm not saying you wouldn't, but
I think it's more so with the caddis. At least you just need that puff almost for it to just float.
it just floats.
Yeah.
That stuff just floats.
Yeah.
And it's cool because it's like the white. I mean, I use the white a lot just because you can see it well. But when it gets in the water, it almost. I mean, it still stays white, but it gets a little more translucent, and so it almost looks like wings too. Mm-hmm. I love EP fibers, and I use a lot of them. A lot of the flies that we sell use EP fibers in them.
Right. Well, you just touched on streamers. Let's go into that. Then
streamers next.
Let's do streamers, and we'll do nymphs afterwards. For
EP fibers.
Okay.
They're different application, but I build a lot of bodies with them. Like bait fish minnows and things like that. You could tie a really cool clouser minnow utilizing those EP fibers, and it doesn't tear up. Toothy fish. I don't know. So, hey, Enrico. Looking at you, man. I need a plug here.
Shout out.
Shout out.
You need royalties.
I need some royalties.
If you see a spike in sales after this podcast,
that's what's happening. Anyways, use them a lot for a lot saltwater or bass fishing. I use a lot of EP fiber. Stuff just is great for a lot of different things. I use a lot of flash, but not like Flashaboo, like a polar chenille or. There's a bazillion different types of flash that comes on a cord. You know what I'm talking about? Where it's like hackle, but it's flash. Synthetic.
I've probably seen it in the shop.
Estaz, you've seen some things like that. Polar chenille or Palmer chenille or, God, I mean, everyone makes a different version of it.
Yeah.
I really like those because it gives you it gives you flash, it gives you movement, it gives you body. But it's all 100% waterproof, right? Like just like Flashaboo, right? The just strands of flash holds no water. That stuff 100% is just limp material. So you tie that in, won't hold water, has a ton of awesome movement. So after a flash, I would do marabou. Marabou just works for all sorts of stuff. Tails. I mean, it's the first thing you tie on the hook is for a woolly booger. I probably don't use enough marabou as I should, but man, that stuff, I mean, there's certain materials that just catch fish, and marabou's one of them. And there's a couple different types of marabou. I'm not going to go into all that.
Yeah.
There's some that's better for wrapping, just like hackle. And I use that on a lot of my streamers that I've been tying recently. Cool stuff. And then that's 4.
I think so.
Number 5 is Schloppen. I love Schloppen.
We all love Schloppen.
You familiar with
some
Schloppen?
Very unfamiliar.
So, it's a type of hackle. You'd see that if your camera's is telling you something. We're good?
Yeah.
We're good?
We're good.
Okay. Past Scotty to future Scotty, we good?
Yes, we're good.
Love Schloppen. It is so if you're not familiar with Schloppen, It is actually a poor quality hackle, right? If you've ever seen, you bought some cheap hackle, when you kind of pull the fibers downwards, a good like dry fly hackle will all, like, you can see each little individual fiber popping out. Schloppen, when you pull it downwards, they stick together. It's got the barbules and they all whatever another, and it all kind of sticks. But Schloppen generally is bigger than dry fly hackle, makes these big wraps, and because those fibers, instead of each one being individual, they'll stick together to create like it'll instead of just being a straight little piece, it'll be like a wrap like this, and it as you wrap it, it creates a body. And they're also thicker, and so if you're going to do like a tail, really popular thing to see on some of these flies these days would be like a Schloppen tail, because it has a lot of movement, but they're pretty durable. So you'll see that tail can just kind of swim like this, and it's popular on a lot of big bait fish patterns these days. But I love wrapping our fly, the Schloppen booger, right? It utilizes Schloppen instead of hackle. And so it gets this much bigger, thicker body on it, with no more material, doesn't hold any more weight than a normal hackle feather would from a woolly booger, but it gives this big, thicker body to it, and a lot of cool movement.
Nice.
Those would be my 5 streamers.
I feel like that's one of the biggest things that you're really trying to accomplish with the streamer is a lot of just the movement. Because I have friends that will go up to some of the rivers in like the Watauga and South Holston. They'll just plug fish just for fun, and they'll fish these rapalas and stuff, and they wreck. They absolutely wreck. Any time of day. Yeah. And I think it's because it has those crazy movements.
Right.
And so with a fly, obviously you're trying to achieve that. So what do you think? Side tangent, but what sort of techniques or materials do you think are really essential for having good movement with your streamer? Flash,
because it's limp, you can shake it, and it, just kind of goes like this if you in the water. A lot of flashes, a lot of like that Schloppen stuff, because you can build that circular 3D body with it really easily by wrapping it. Those filler flash that I said earlier, anything that has looks like hackle, that you wrap like hackle, but it's synthetic and flashy. Love those, because you get a lot of that movement when you strip it. It kind of slims down and then it puffs out.
Right.
Love that stuff.
Does it push water?
Doesn't push water very well,
but it at least
it has that movement.
Right.
Just like marabou. Marabou doesn't push water, but it has that movement. That's kind of funny that everything you just mentioned was on my top 5 list. Stuff that has that good movement to it, and that's what I like.
Yeah, because I remember one of the biggest things when we first went to Canada, and that's when you first came up with the Mima, was you talked. I mean, this is a little different because it does open up and close a lot, but it also has that deer hair head, which pushes a bunch of water.
Yeah.
And so I think...
And those eyes, so you can get it.
Yeah, so it sinks. Yeah. So it's like the Cooter Brown, but it has a little more movement and pushes a little bit more water and sinks, really.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But anything like... Oh, well, I guess... I don't know. It's hard to do that without bucktail, but... I don't know. I like bucktail, but I don't use a ton of bucktail. There you go. I don't know.
There you go. So we covered the dries. We covered the general deal for streamers. I think all these are just general materials that you can get that you can get really creative with.
Yes.
And
different
colors.
I'm kind of trying to pick stuff too that laps over. Like we saw, the EP was maybe on my dry list. It's also on my streamer list. I'm trying to pick some stuff that would kind of maybe overlap for you guys.
Right. So then going into nymphs,
pheasant tail.
Yeah, go for it.
Number 1, pheasant tail. There are certain materials that fish eat. Pheasant tail is one of them. Fish just eat pheasant tail. I don't know what it is. I don't care. Every freaking nymph that I that's not true, but it feels like every nymph that I tie has pheasant tail in it. It's the tail, it's the body, it's wrapped, it's tied in, it's the legs. I don't know. Like, fish just eat pheasant tail, and that's just the short and sweet of it.
It mimics the back so well, though.
Yeah, it all just looks good, and there's no. I I'm not gonna go much into like synthetic like versus the natural materials these like right now, but there is no synthetic that replicates pheasant tail because the fibers are, I mean, they're microscopic on there, but it gives this look that's just so good. Mm-hmm. I use a lot of pheasant tail in my nymphs. If you guys didn't just figure that out,
it's a good, I mean, general base starting point for your tail.
Yes,
and for your body too.
Yep, love it. Dubbing. I mean, I'd probably go back to dubbing because you could use
any sort of difference in dubbing, brand wise or colors or.
I might have some different colors, but that doesn't mean. I mean, we saw one of the fish that just for example. I mean, we were just on this trip, as Scotty said, catching cutthroat. One of the chubbies that did the best for me on our trip was one that I tied with the pheasant tail colored synthetic dubbing. Ice dub, as it's called, for any of you guys that do tie flies that are watching this or listening. It's a pheasant tail colored dubbing. That stuff I tied on a chubby, and it wrecked last week. Mm-hmm. So it'd make an awesome collar for a nymph. You could use it as the body for a dry. I like a lot of materials that I could double duty for. And then, but generally, yes, there is a difference between like dry fly dubbing and nymph dubbing. Usually dry fly dubbing is a little lighter and almost wispy might be the word, but it's like a thinner kind of dubbing. It goes on easier to make a noodle with. That's a technique for making dubbing if you didn't know. It works a little different. Nymph dubbing is going to be buggy. It's going to have a lot of loose, wild hairs going all over the place. But as you wrap it, that kind of makes it look just super buggy, as we say. It makes it look like it's got legs and a weird body and just weird, nymphs have these gills that sometimes are on their back and
that's what you want, though.
Little fibers.
You just want it to look buggy.
Yeah. And that's what nymph dubbing does, I think, a little bit better, is it makes the kind of those wild hairs going everywhere. Mm-hmm. So there is a difference between nymph dubbing and dry dubbing, but dubbing to me is one of the best things you could have on a nymph list, I guess.
Yeah.
If I was going to go somewhere, I'd have some different kinds of dubbing to tie my nymphs with. I mean, that wire is so important in so many things, whether it's, I mean, you're going to use it for your a lot of dry flies utilize it, stemmy and caddis or two, elk hair caddis and a stimulator, two of the most popular dry flies that would utilize it as well. A thin, or it's called like small, or they also call it brassy, BR. You'll see it from UTC brand. You'll see that's like the most popular wire brand. You'll see as labeled as small or BR will be listed. That's some of the best stuff you can have, because as you wrap it around a body, it helps really kind of hold a lot of those things in together. If you catch a lot of toothy fish, brown trout or cutthroat generally have a lot of, I mean, it's pretty decent teeth. I mean, you know that. They'll sometimes
they'll get you,
cut you up a little bit if you're digging in there trying to get one out of them. So those will just help your flies give a little more kind of durability as a big pro on the flip side. But two, it also kind of adds that segmented look. You've looked at some nymphs and you've seen how they kind of have it like they're segmented down. Their bodies maybe taper a little bit, something like that, and that wire adds like a cool segmented look to it. So I really like that stuff. And then
again, it gives you a little bit more weight.
Yeah, help. Yeah, helps with your weight too. I wouldn't put a lot of stock in that, but for sure. Yeah.
Well, it depends. I mean, you could be tying, say, a girdle bug, and you below your chenille, you wrap a ton of wire if you want it really heavy. Because I've done that before for girdle bugs.
The wire that you would wrap for like a girdle bug is going to be very different than the wire that you wrap for like a pheasant tail.
Right.
Because they do sell wire that specifically is just weight that you add in your fly. Mm-hmm. But yeah, so if you want to classify all that together, then abso-freaking-lutely wire would be one of my biggest ones. Copper wire for a
you
copper
said legs.
john.
That was your third one. like rubber legs.
Yeah, rubber legs for sure.
But
About that.
and then the last one, what do you think is a good piece of material that you should look to get when you're in a fly shop for nymphs?
You know what? I'm going to say this as a beginner podcast, as a beginner tire, Peacock herl. Peacock is just another thing. You cannot get a synthetic version of it. There's no synthetic Peacock that works as good as Peacock. And it's simply fish just freaking eat it. You wrap it. The core is it can be a little brittle if you purchase cheap stuff, but the core you could get from something synthetic, but it's got all these little pieces that stick out of it. It's what makes it look like fuzzy. And Peacock is just, fish just eat Peacock. That's a trout.
Yeah.
Or you'll see Peacock used in streamers too. And it's that iridescent that kind of got that cool color combo. It's mottled, it's shiny, it's flashy, but it's also just got like those fibers. That stuff just works. So Peacock.
Sweet. Yeah. I think
that's my last
that's a good pick. I think a good, especially for someone like me who has some tying experience but doesn't do it a ton.
Yeah.
And I think it really, you look at it for nymphs, especially how simple you can make it. And really it's thread a lot of times, and you usually you have a neck collar, which is with dubbing. Maybe you'll throw some
Peacock. I see a lot of
Peacock. Or Peacock, yeah. And then sometimes you'll have a pheasant tail off the back, some sort of tail. And if you want to throw some legs on there or whatever.
And I mean, most of the nymphs that you ever see, like a pheasant tail and a rubber-legged pheasant tail, or a prince and a rubber-legged prince. It's the exact same fly. You just add in rubber legs.
Yeah.
So kind of gives a little more versatility too. With only one more purchase, you can tie both a pheasant tail and a rubber-legged pheasant tail.
Do you think that
kind of go from like more of like a mayfly or maybe even a case caddis kind of look to like more of a stonefly look? Even only knowing one pattern. I know how to tie a pheasant tail. Well, great. Well, let's toss some legs in there. Kind of mixes a lot of different things up.
Right. Yeah, I think it's really cool how you kind of get a better understanding of the bug life, and it just really gives you a better understanding of why trout are eating the bugs that you're feeding them.
Yes.
And why they feed on what they feed on versus, go to a shop. Oh, there's a hot fly box, and I'm just going to grab this
bug
one.
that's working.
Because then you don't really realize how you should fish it. You just I remember going into shops and just being like, what do I use?
Dude, they eat worms right now.
They eat worms?
Okay, great.
Davidson River, they always eat worms. Zebra midges.
All right. Let me give you a hint. Fish eat worms, okay? Go home.
Basically, you should have skipped all the way to here and just know all you need to do is wrap some squirmy worms.
Eat worms.
I can't believe you did not include that in your list
for squirmy worm material. I'm going to include eggs in the nymph section. No, just some normal nymphs is all you need.
That's all you need.
But no, I mean you're exactly right though. I mean there's I think it really makes you think more about, okay, I'm going to tie this fly, or like, why does this fly work? Or I'm going to tie this fly because I saw some caddis today, or I saw some bait fish today. And that really just kind of goes, I think it goes a long way. It just opens up your understanding, and it almost forces you to open up your understanding of your local fishery. Maybe not even just your understanding of it, but it makes you notice it almost more than just, okay, I'm just going to show up and the dude at the fly shop said that they eat zebra midges, and I'm going to throw some freaking zebra midges today.
Yeah, exactly.
Kind of just opens up your understanding, makes you think about it. And I think that's big.
And every river system is different, but I think the more you fish different areas and the more you really try to understand these areas, more so than just, I'm catching a fish on this fly that I was told to use, the more that'll help you then going to the next river system.
Yes.
And you'll start to connect things. You're like, oh, wow, these things aren't, yes, it's a different fish. It's a different part of the country, but They're still fish. They're
Yeah.
still eating nymphs. They're still eating dries.
Yeah.
They're still eating streamers. It's just maybe you adjust things a little bit based on that area.
Yeah, I love that. I love that.
And so one of the things that I've noticed that you're really particular on, and you've always really, I don't know, I think what stands out about the blue line flies a lot of times and the ones that you tie are the hooks.
Yes.
So I think we should definitely talk about hooks because I would love to get your take on hooks and how you choose your hooks based on the flies that you're tying.
Hooks are not that expensive. I mean, yes, quality hooks cost more than cheap hooks. I mean, like another hot take from Blue Line Flies right there. Boom, go home.
Should we make this a subscription podcast?
Yeah, I think y'all should have to start paying for some of this information I'm giving you. I mean, expensive hooks are more expensive than cheap hooks. On the flip side, maybe it's just me, maybe, I don't know, whatever. But it's like if I'm going to spend the time, money, and effort to tie a fly, I'm not going to tie something on just some cheap hook, like just some cheap like Orvis branded hook. Yeah, that you it just says Nymph on the top of it, and you buy it and it's in a just clear plastic bag. Like and so what Scotty's saying, for us, all the hooks that we use are expensive hooks. And all of the flies, I told Steven when we were creating our company, I was like, if we cannot still have, kind of the profit margins that we need and all these things with the right hook, then I'm not interested in creating Blue Line. That's not going to happen for us. Figured out a way to make it work, and it's great. But we spend so much more money on hooks than other companies do, because even though we're commercially tying a lot of our flies, we use things like Gamakatsu, Arex, Kona, like just depending upon kind of the shape and the performance that we need. We're using the highest quality hooks that I would tie on my flies, because I would not sell these folks a fly that I wouldn't put in my box and that I wouldn't fish myself. And the last, just the last thing that I would ever want to have happen is me hook up on a fish and it be a big fish. Me be like, man, I hope that 4-cent hook holds together.
Yeah. Yeah.
Man, I hope that hook doesn't bend out. You only have to really bend out 2 or 3 hooks in your life before you're like, fuck that. I'm not doing that
Especially
anymore.
If it's a big fish.
Yeah. I mean, it obviously only happens on big fish, I guess, where it's important, but still, like, that's the last, I mean, I'm worried about my tippet, and I'm worried about, the different things with the fish. Where did I hook it, as I'm fighting a good fish? The last thing I ever want to think about is, man, I hope that hook doesn't bend out.
Yeah.
So we do use I use expensive hooks, because even though, the package might be a little more per hook, if you still break it down to the per hook kind of, it's a few cents more per hook. Mm-hmm. I know the package might be a few bucks more, and you're like, man, I could cut a corner right here. It's not worth it.
So is it more the strength and the quality of the hook, or is it the shape that you're looking for different flies?
It's both. It's absolutely both. Certain flies, I need a shape because it's going to do something different for the fly. Maybe for my dry flies, a fantastic hook example that is a real life hook example between me and you during Short Bus Volume 2, right? Montana?
Yes.
2?
Yes.
Okay, great.
Yes.
Short Bus Volume 2.
There's only been 2 so far, so good job.
Sure enough. So, Short Bus Volume 2. Remember that day on the Madison where the hoppers were just out and fish were just eating hoppers that day? But remember, this is a first world problem, guys. I'm sorry I don't mean it to be like this, but here it comes. We had so many big fish eat hoppers that day. Do you remember that?
Yeah. Well, we fished a different river.
Oh, y'all did that way day. And,
yeah.
Anyways.
But
okay.
yes, you told us about it.
Huge fish. I mean, 20+ inch browns eating hoppers. But they only would eat, like they were kind of eating the hoppers that were, that we saw, the hoppers we were seeing were tiny, tiny, tiny hoppers. And so the gap on those hooks that they were using, just they tied whatever size, a 4 or 6, and then they were scaling it down.
Bought from the shop.
Because we bought them from the shop, because I personally did not have any hoppers that were that small, because I don't fish dries. So,
I'd beg to differ.
I'm coming around to it. I tried it this year, and actually it was great.
Yeah.
A little bit of a dry fly addict now, but the hoppers that I was buying from the shops were all these tiny microscopic little these hoppers that were the smallest hoppers you could buy, made of foam. Great, they floated awesome. But the hooks were these tiny little things, and the gap was so small and bad. From every fly company, it didn't matter, because if I go in a fly shop, I'm not like, oh, that's just, here's a hopper. I'm like, oh, that's so-and-so's hopper that, I know kind of the flies. And I'm like, it doesn't matter what company I was looking at. Their hooks were garbage. I'm calling all of y'all out. If you work at that company, or you own that company or whatever, and you're listening to this, your hook is freaking trash on small hoppers.
There you go.
Fight me about it. We could not connect on these big fish. You'd pin them. They'd give you like 2 head shakes and you'd come off.
Yeah.
That last stretch, I mean, it was on. It was on. And I lost 6 fish that were 18, 16 plus, I would say. Being conservative, they were 16 plus.
Dang.
Lost them because they were eating the smallest hopper on the planet, and all of them had the worst hook. So
for that example, takeaway,
real life example for you. That example, my takeaway was, well, hell, I am tying some hoppers with good hooks on them. So you got to have a hook that has a gap big enough for what you're after. Obviously, small fish, sure. If you're going to catch a bunch of small fish, small, really discerning fish, maybe up in the the Smokies and kind of Appalachians, the fish maybe aren't as pressured. If you're trying to catch some fish in a more of a pressured area, maybe you do need that little smaller gap hook. But if you're trying to catch big fish on a fly, you need a hook that's going to get in their mouth and get in their jaw and not just prick them. I mean, a 20-inch brown trout simply has a different mouth than a 6-inch brown trout does. Mm-hmm. So picking a hook that's short so that you can tie the small hopper, but that's long enough with the gap. That's the difference between the shank, the side, kind of the side to side part where you tie the fly,
right.
and the hook point is bigger so that you could still catch a large fish on that hook.
So it's still maybe a size 16 or an 18
right
hook, but it's just a little bit wider gap.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Yeah. So I pick shape. I'm very worked up on shape, which is kind of is one of the reasons why I kind of bounce around, which is why with some of our flies you might see Arex hooks on one fly and Gamakatsu hooks on another. Is because Arex, and it's not any of their fault. It's impossible to make that many shapes of hooks, right? I mean, how many shapes can you really make, right? But it's impossible for every company to make every different hook. So some of the reasons that you guys might buy one fly that has a Gamakatsu hook and one fly has an Arex hook is because the shape was right. For what I wanted it to do, the shape was right. And Gamakatsu and Arex, that's interchangeable quality. That's Mercedes and BMW, I guess. That's interchangeably good hooks. So that's kind of what I look for, is just a quality hook from a company like those. It doesn't have to be one of the ones I trust. Even Mustad makes some quality hooks, but I use a quality hook with the shape that I like. Mm-hmm. One of the things that I also try to do, maybe this is just me being a little, kind of crazy with my fly tying, is I really like to pair, if I can. I won't sacrifice this. I won't sacrifice performance, but if I can, I love to pick a silver hook for a light colored fly and a dark hook for a dark colored fly. So a lot of my bait fish patterns, best example for you, the Slim Shaddy that we tie. I only sell it in one color. It's only sold in white.
White, yeah.
Silver hooks. Love the hooks on that fly, and I can get them in silver, and they're the right performance that I wanted. Love to have a silver hook on a white fly.
Fly Rex.
Right.
Especially if you're just using floating line and that's all you have.
Yeah.
It's a great fly to fish with floating line.
It is.
Anyways.
But I do like to do that if I can. I won't sacrifice the performance or anything else. The performance is my number one. So yes, I mean, we were bull trout fishing. Well, we've been bull trout fishing multiple times now.
Yeah.
A lot of those flies don't come with silver hooks. They're black.
Yeah.
For the hooks that I like. The A-bud, silver. Or no, black. Black hook.
Okay.
Or black, kind of that nickel, dark gray, whatever you want to call it. But it's
darker
dark.
fly.
It's a dark fly. It's got a dark hook.
And do they have that kind of, it's not, symmetric, I don't know what you call it, but the fly or the hook almost comes off to the side a little bit. What's that called?
A stinger.
A stinger hook. Yeah,
where
yeah.
They kind of have the.
I've seen you use that on a lot of your streamers.
Yeah, some of my rear hooks do have that stinger where it comes down and then the hook comes and like the hook is kind of bent from the shank.
Yeah.
I do like those. Just kind of depends on what the application is.
Got it. And why would you use a shank hook versus a
lot of times that would just be if you're using a stinger hook. That would be
stinger
one that you drop off the back of a fly. That's kind of hangs out behind the fly almost for like a fish that's just going to grab maybe the tail or behind it, articulated flies maybe. They'll just grab that little hook on the back. I just like that little bit. All right. Well, I think we got enough about hooks.
Yeah, I think that helps a lot, especially
hopefully
just
so.
I think the shape and the size, instead of just going in and buying a size 16 hook, at least it helps, especially me going in now thinking, okay, especially because there's jig hooks too, which are great for nymphs. That's a whole nother thing. I love jig hooks for nymphs around where I'm fishing because they, with the bead head, they sink and they don't bump on rocks as much. But I think the big thing is just, the big takeaway for that is paying attention to the shape.
I like the shape.
And not just a size 16 hook.
Yep.
You can mix it up and get creative with it.
Yeah.
So I guess the next thing I want to go into is fly tying on the go, which is something that we utilize on our trips. And I guess, one, is it worth it? And why do you think it's worth it? And how do you utilize fly tying on a longer trip when we're going to fish a new fishery?
I mean, it's worth it for me because I like to be able to dial in the flies that I want to use, right? So if you go into a fly shop and they tell you, hey, the blank is working. Okay, great. I'm obviously going to buy a few of them. I mean, if I ever go in a shop and someone gives me some intel, I'm going to buy whatever they, I mean, I'm not going to buy a Helios rod, but if they say that's working, but if he's like,
my rod will be good too. Thank you though. I appreciate it.
my rod would be just fine.
I can use my rod.
But if I ever go in a shop and the guys are like, hey man, yeah, check out a couple Rainbow Warriors, that's a good one from where kind of year round, or chubbies are working. Oh wow,
oh really?
Oh wow, I can't believe it. But I always buy a few flies if I go in a fly shop. But as far as being on a trip, I like to have the stuff with me. If I'm going to go somewhere that's more than a day, or more than just a long weekend trip, I'm probably going to bring some fly tying stuff. I've got a small kit that I put together. It's that vise that I told you guys about, the Renzetti Traveler vise. Just because it says Traveler, that doesn't actually mean it's great to travel. It's just their best vise. I've got one of those. It's my beginner fly tying vise. It was the first real vise that I bought. They've kind of made some changes to it now, and it's a lot better. But I still use just the original one that I had. And then I built kind of just a tool roll of some of the basic tools that I like to bring so that I can just have that packed in a separate bag. It doesn't take up much room. I mean, you've seen a lot of times I'll put it in a box or I'll bring it in a bag, and it's, it's not that
it's not
big.
huge.
So generally I have the room. And then just kind of depending upon what I'm doing. I mean, I know, you kind of have a little bit of idea. Okay, I'm going to Montana in the fall. I'm probably going to streamer fish. I'm not going to be throwing dries. So I'm probably going to have those 5 materials we listed from the streamer section earlier, and maybe just a few others in a few different colors. Especially, I mean, and even then, you've seen in Canada, if I'm going somewhere that has a fly shop, I'll go maybe buy a couple materials that I need, but then that's all I have to buy to be able to tie the exact fly that I'm thinking of.
Right.
If you're going somewhere that has some fly shops. So,
which we did in Canada, which is cool.
Which we did.
And we kind of dialed it into what ended up being the A-bud.
Yeah.
Which did
exactly.
well. So it's kind of cool.
And yeah, remember I bought Schloppen, the hackle kind of feathers while we were up there that I needed in that right color to get the A-bud right. So, I mean, I think it's worth it if you're going on a week-long trip, if you have the room. If you don't have the room, I guess it is what it is, but I'd probably just toss out whatever you didn't have room for your fly tying stuff in. And, I mean, how many pairs of underwear do you really need? You know what I'm saying? Like, fly tying stuff's so much more important than that.
Oh, way more.
I mean, you got wet wipes for a reason.
Right. You don't need to wear a new pair of underwear every day.
No,
That doesn't. I've started packing way less underwear. That's whole nother podcast. But
you pack like you're gonna shit yourself every day we're out there.
Yes, that's how I used to do it. I'll probably, I'll change. I'll probably wear 2 different pairs of boxers throughout the day.
But if I go a day without shitting myself, that's a good day.
That is a good day. Well, you just,
All right. Well, on that note, we'll see you guys. Thanks for
keep the wet wipes.
I don't know. If you've got the room for it, great. I mean, obviously, when we went, I've flown, we fished Patagonia a while back. I didn't bring fly tying stuff down there, but also I knew, that I'd be able to get some flies and whatever. Yeah. If you're going somewhere that's got flies, I mean, when I go to Belize, I generally don't bring fly tying stuff, but you better believe if we're heading out on the short bus, I'm gonna have some fly tying stuff. Or we're heading out to Montana to fish for a couple days, I'm gonna have my fly tying stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, just kind of simplifying it.
Yeah,
like you said,
some super basic stuff. Because then, if I've already got the vise, I've got the tools, I've got the whatever, and we're like, man, I need some of these hoppers that are small, but dang, I just need some good hooks on them.
Right.
Great. We run to the fly shop. We buy a hook. We buy a bag of hooks for $4. And I've already got the tan foam and the wings and the rubber legs that I need to tie whatever hopper pattern maybe I could come up with that night. So I like to do it maybe even to think, maybe you don't even bring exactly the right stuff, but you could make a similar fly to what you want for a couple bucks by maybe 1 or 2 materials from a fly shop. Maybe you got to buy a pack of hooks and a different color foam or a different color, pheasant tail, whatever, right? A different color flash, maybe. And you could dial in exactly what you want to fish. So
I think it's good too if you're doing a trip like we just did in the backcountry where there aren't fly shops nearby.
Yeah.
It's good to have. I mean, granted, we didn't really tie any flies in this last trip, but if we are going somewhere like we did last year with the short bus, and you're not going to be near a fly shop, it would be maybe smart to bring some extra stuff.
Yep.
Depending on how much you tied beforehand.
Well, yeah, and that's the thing. Is how much did you tie beforehand? Because if you're bringing 6 Ziploc bags of flies with you, I mean, do you really need to bring it? No.
Those are the best fly boxes out there.
Oh, Blue Line Fly Box. You need to check them out.
Yeah.
But I mean, if you're bringing a bazillion flies with you, then no, don't bring your fly tying stuff. But I was not I mean, for a lot of those trips, I was too busy leading up to the trip, getting the things ready to go on the trip.
Right.
I mean, we were talking about it earlier today, I spend roughly 2 weeks before these short bus trips getting all the stuff in the bus and separate, organized and set up. And, I've got so much stuff to do before a lot of these trips that I can't sit there and tie for a week straight. And I've got, I'm still running this business and all this other stuff that I've got to do and answering all of y'all's emails and Instagram stuff. And I can't tie as much as I need to for some of these. So, I tie maybe 2 or 3 of the patterns that I want to tie. And then you find one that's good on the second day. I mean, how many flies 2 flies may not last you very long. And what if that's just the fly that was on?
Right.
So that's why I like to have the ability to be able to tie some stuff.
Yeah. It's good to have it just in case, like you're saying.
Yeah. But I mean, yeah, it's a great point. If you're able to sit down and just spin up a bunch of different flies and be able to bring a lot of flies with you, then awesome.
Right.
But if you're not, and you're going somewhere that doesn't have fly shops and you're 3 miles in the backcountry, or you're 3 hours down a dirt road in the backcountry, and you're 6 hours from a town that has a fly shop, well, you might ought to bring some fly tying stuff with you if you know how to do it.
You lose that one chubby.
Whoop.
Well, that's poor planning on your part.
I hope to read another chubby.
Yeah, exactly.
Different color chubby.
Well, I'm definitely excited to kind of see get to and hopefully get to tie some on the upcoming trip with the new.
I'm spinning bugs on the
fly
new trip.
tying station.
I don't know if I'm bringing flies. I'm just gonna.
Dude, it's so much better than what we have.
I'm just hanging out in the fly tying station.
I just can't wait for the people to see.
Even at the brewery night, I think I'm just gonna be tying flies.
Yeah. It's not even a tour of the bus. It's come watch Adam tie flies. In the bus.
Only like 2 people could stand behind me and watch me tie flies with the amount of room that there is.
Yeah, exactly. So what do you think is the biggest misconception about fly tying? And this could be from when you started to now to what you think maybe misconceptions that people have getting into it now, or
okay. Can I do 2?
Yeah,
because I have 2.
Yeah, do 2.
That it's cheaper than buying flies because it is not. It is not cheaper to tie your own flies. And the other one is that it's like that the flies that you tie are not as good as the ones that you see on Instagram or the ones that you see that you buy from the shop or whatever. Those are the 2. We break both of them down, but it is not cheaper to tie flies than it is to buy them. A vise costs $100. Your tools cost $50. Your materials. If you took the vise and the tools out of it, maybe we could start getting somewhere. But I mean, the majority of you guys, how many flies could you buy for $150? Quite a bit. I mean, that's a lot of chubbies or a lot of whatevers, but just
it's not drastically different than buying flies from a shop.
No.
But I think the alternative is you do get to fine tune.
You get to tune the flies.
Yes.
And you get to tie flies in colors that they don't come in and sizes they don't come in, with different and probably better hooks than they come in, unless you bought them from BlueLineFlies.com. And just some different things. You get to put your own spin on them.
Right.
That's what you get to do. That's the pro. The pro isn't, I'm just going to save a shitload of money by tying all my own flies. Sure. If
you just tie thread midges.
If you just tied zebra midges, great. But you're not going to. I don't know. You might. You specifically that I'm talking to right now.
I know some people that only tie midges.
Then great. Then those people can.
Yeah.
But if how many thousands of dollars of tying materials do I have that are not flies yet? It's incredible. But on the flip side, I can also walk in my basement, and if you said, hey, I want you to tie a fly, I could probably just go downstairs and tie it. I'm not going to need to go to a fly shop and tie it, to tie anything that I want to fish, because I have all my favorite materials in all my favorite colors. If you said, yeah, I need you to tie a neon blue Sculperino, well, I could almost do that.
Yeah.
It's not, I'd have part of it. But, the amount of stuff that you're going to buy for fly tying does not save you money, because you're not going to just buy the stuff that you need to tie. So I heard that a lot. If that's the reason you want to get into fly tying, do not do it. Just go buy your flies. But if you want to be able to put your personal spin, your personal take, and you think that would be fun and rewarding and something to do. I know a lot of people, like in the Midwest too, maybe they tie a lot through the winters because there's not a lot of fishing. It's certain places. Maybe you don't have a lot of fishing. I know like smallmouth for me just turns off. Like I don't fish late fall to early spring. I just don't fish for smallmouth. I focused on trout. I focused on a lot of other stuff. But
slopes.
But I mean, if you're not, I mean, you know, if you live somewhere that your fishery just doesn't really exist in the winter, then man, maybe you kind of turn this summer-long hobby into a year-long hobby.
Right.
If that's the reason you want to get into it, great. But do not get into it. I don't think you should get into it to save money unless you have the willpower to buy a relatively cheap vise and you want to just spin zebra midges in like 3 colors. Great.
And then your second one was what?
My second one was the flies that you make are not as good as what you see on Instagram or whatever. There's definitely a saying and I mean, this is true that so you're familiar with a hare's ear nymph, real just buggy looking attractor nymph pattern. Hare's ear nymphs tied by beginners catch more fish than hare's ear nymphs that you buy from a professional fly tier, right? How true all that is, you know, but like it's definitely a saying in fly tying because they're not consecutive wraps. They're not tapered perfectly and they're not, you know, exactly symmetrical because what our mind's eye thinks looks good, right? It's symmetry and, you know, the taper, how it gets, you know, thin at the bottom of the fly and gets thicker up towards the top and, you know, it looks perfect from the top or the side. But, you know, a beginner one might have some crisscrossed thread wraps that aren't, you know, boom, 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 you know, lined up perfectly. And if you look at some, you know, kind of messed up bugs that are floating down the river, they're probably not perfectly symmetrical and perfectly tapered. And, you know, the stuff that you think looks good to you may not be what looks good to a fish, right? So beginner flies, fish them. Take your flies and fish them. I know, I mean, obviously there's a really big thing, and the reason people don't is because there's a big thing with confidence flies, right? You go bull trout fishing, you put on an A-bud or a Meemaw, that's a confidence fly for us, right? Like, we've done well on them. We know those flies work. We're like, all right, great. Here we go. Meemaw. If they're not going to eat this, they're not going to eat anything. Yeah. I mean, you know, you just got confidence in it. Sculperino is one of my confidence flies. If I try some other stuff and it's not working, we freak Sculperino. Madison Sculpen's another one, right? Like, you got your confidence flies. If you're not confident in a fly, you might not fish it as good. And I definitely, it being from my guiding days, I really think that's a thing. But be confident in the stuff that you tie as a beginner. Do not compare it to the stuff that you see on Instagram, to the stuff that you see fly companies putting out. Some of the flies, I mean, a lot of the stuff we sell, I use myself. I mean, that's the stuff, I mean, you've seen our fly boxes. You've gone fishing with me plenty of times, and I tie on a company fly. And it's not for the videos. Like, that's just the fly that I think we need to tie on. Yeah. But, you know, you see a lot of that stuff is just really like, that's what I think is going to work. But, you know, also a lot of the stuff that we sell, it has to look good or else people won't buy it. Because I can't sell a fly that is asymmetrical. People do not like asymmetrical things, right? Mm-hmm. It's got your brain is like, oh, it's got to be.
Yeah, you got to get away from that.
Yeah, it's got to be this, and it's got to taper right, and it's got to look right.
And maybe if you are a tyer who's like, so to say, a veteran tyer who's been doing it for a while, maybe, you know, because you get so accustomed to trying to have the perfect tie. Mm-hmm. It's got to look symmetrical. It's got to look really good. But maybe you mix it up and you just have some stuff that looks a little janky.
You tie some just junk.
Yeah, and it might work.
I mean, that's the reason. I'm not saying that you should do this if you're under the age of 21. But if you just would go buy a bottle of Jack Daniels and put it on your fly tying desk. You start out that evening and your flies, like, they just get really good. And they're like super symmetrical, super tapered. And you're like, God, I really love that. And then you start drinking more of that bottle of Jack Daniels. And by the end of it, they look like those beginner hare's ears that catch fish. You're just thread wraps are going everywhere. And you're just having a great time.
And then you find out on the river, the ones towards the end of the night are slaying. Those are the bugs that are working.
They're also falling apart because you forgot to whip fish. And you didn't add any cement, and they're missing the legs and the flash. And I don't know.
I love it.
No, yeah, but
some of the best flies come up are made because of that.
That's all I'm saying.
That method.
That's all I'm saying.
We're not encouraging
don't
that
do
lifestyle.
That. Do not.
But if that is something that you already indulge in,
give it a shot. Give it a shot.
Give it a shot.
Let me know how it goes.
So, lastly, to close this out, because I think we've covered a ton of stuff, and obviously we could go into so much of the nitty gritty stuff that I would just have. I
try to keep it a little higher level for you guys, a little more up here without deep diving into the.
I would have been
all
lost.
of it.
We'll definitely do more, and you guys definitely let us know what questions you have from this, and if you want us to dive deeper into other topics.
I still think a Q&A where we ask the audience a Q&A fly tying series. I still think that would be fun. We should do that.
We'll definitely do that. But what would you say has, through your fly tying career, has been the biggest breakthrough and the biggest thing that you've, biggest like light bulb moment that has kind of helped your tying, whether that be just in, efficiency or creativity and creating more flies, or just for it all to make sense? What has been the biggest breakthrough light bulb moment?
I don't know if I had exactly what you're talking about. I think it kind of gradually came up to where all of a sudden I just realized my confidence flies were my flies. I think that was the biggest moment that was just like, boom, was when the first thing that I wanted to tie on was a fly that I made. And that became my I just mentioned confidence flies, right? I know you have confidence flies. You go to a cutthroat stream where you can tie on a chubby.
Yep.
It's confidence, right? Like that black and purple.
Oh,
like,
dude.
like a size 6 black and purple chubby.
I don't need anything else. I don't even need a fly box.
Yeah. I don't even need a fly box. I just need like 4
One
of those.
One of those and 3X. I'm good. All right, guys. See you later.
See ya. No, I don't need. Sorry, Sims. I don't actually need to bring that pack today. I just got this one fly. We're set. Don't worry about it. Pro tip: save money by just liking one fly.
Just have one,
and
fly.
You don't have to buy a pack anymore.
Khaki cat, baby.
No, I think to me it was that because I used to do that. I mean, that's personal experience coming from you guys on the misconception part that, I used to look at my flies and be like, man, that doesn't look anything like what you could buy out of the Orvis catalog or out off Cabela's, catalog. Of course, back then I was looking at the catalogs of flies.
Dated yourself.
I just dated myself. Sorry about that. Or, you go in a fly shop and you look at the stuff at, some of these fly shops that I used to go in and I was like, man, mine do not look anything like that.
Yeah.
And it was just a light switch that, I tied enough flies that it got to the point where I was like, you know what? I really like this fly. We're going to try it. And then I started catching fish on the flies that I caught. And I was like, dang, that's so cool. And just it really started snowballing. So I don't know if there was really just one thing that I did. I couldn't tell you guys, go out there and just do this one thing, and all of a sudden you'll love your flies and it'll just click for you. But I guess I just did it enough. I tied enough flies that I was replicating. For the first little while, all I did was replicate everybody else's flies that I thought worked or stuff that I had bought from fly shops that worked. Mm-hmm. And then all of a sudden, I was like tying some of that stuff and I started fishing it and I was like, dang. I want to go, and the first thing I'm going to tie on is this new fly that I came out with, or that I just designed, or this. The first thing that I want to do is tie on one of my flies, and I think that was the moment that I was like, you know what, this is it right here.
So just having confidence in your own ties, even
I think
no matter
it.
what level you're at, pretty much.
I think that's it. There's still flies. I mean, I fished some chubbies that I didn't tie myself.
Oh,
even though
sure.
I just put out a video of how to tie a chubby. I mean, I still buy a lot of flies. I mostly that's my fault because I'm too busy to tie every chubby that I ever in every color that I ever wanted to fish. But I think and that's also not my specialty. But I think that's it. Just tie enough flies and give them a shot before you kind of put judgment on yourself of. Man, my fly's not as good as what I could buy over at Due South Outfitters. Those guys got all the coolest flies.
Right.
But, sometimes you just got to try that stuff and see what it does. But yeah, once my stuff kind of became my confidence flies, I feel like that was a really big turning point for me when I was like, you know what? I'm just going to start mostly tying my own stuff.
Yeah.
And then that's when it really started to transition from I'm going to tie elk hair caddisses to, okay, I'm going to look at a picture of a caddis and I'm going to start experimenting. And that's the thing. That's the biggest thing. I don't know. That'll be my takeaway. That's the biggest thing for me that I love about it. We talked earlier in our recent trip about how everything's a puzzle that you're trying to fit together and put together to catch this one fish or to catch this fish that you're after or to target these different fish or whatever, right? It's everywhere you go is a puzzle that you're trying to piece together. For me, fly tying is an extra piece of the puzzle that I love to just try to fit in there that really is rewarding when it works, right?
Yeah.
You know, you could, sure, you go buy some chubbies and they just work. But it's so cool to, you know, sit down and be like, man, they're eating this weird grass, this tan, or we're like this brown grasshopper that we saw, right? We saw some grasshoppers that were a little different color this trip.
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't have anything in my box that was that color. We didn't throw anything that matched that.
Yeah.
But that'd be so cool, right? If that place wasn't, you know, 12 hours from here, great. I'd love to go downstairs right now, tie a fly that can match it. But
right.
I think that's just the coolest thing for me is just it's an extra piece of a puzzle that you kind of get to fit together that you can fine tune that puzzle piece to be like, yeah, that's it right there.
Right. And then it clicks and then it's just so rewarding.
It's so rewarding. I mean, coming up with these trips, planning these trips, finding these trips, and then finally getting Bryant on that bull trout. I mean, that stuff's so rewarding that I that's what kind of keeps me coming back. And that's just an extra element of it with the fly tying portion that it's just addictive to me.
It's so exciting, dude. Gosh.
And if you don't like to tie, if that doesn't like get you jazzed, then you don't need to tie flies. Just don't then. Just go buy them.
Yeah.
Because there's so many good flies on the market that you don't need to tie your own.
Yeah.
It's just if that aspect interests you, then you should.
Yeah. What I think is really cool, that was really good advice. I think great way to close it out. But I think what's really cool is a lot of our viewers of the podcast will actually be listening and watching the podcast while tying, which is so cool.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you've been tying this whole time, hopefully you got some inspiration and maybe are going out trying something new or, you know, hopefully learned a new technique or just learned something from your process and how you operate. Because I think, like with anything in fly fishing, what?
I'm so sorry. I just thought of the fact that I said that, you know, while I'm tying flies, I like to pull up a picture of a fly and have it all up. We need to do a video one day where you just walk up and I'm tying flies. And you're like, what the hell are you doing? And I'm like, just tying squirmy worms. And I just have pictures of just worms on the screen. Or like tying some egg patterns. It's just pictures of eggs.
You're like, what are you doing?
No, that one's a little oranger than this one. I'm sorry. I totally ruined that, but I just thought of how I said that nice little tidbit, which I do with like a caddis or whatever, but you just walk in, this is a picture of a worm.
It's just a worm.
Google images worm.
Why are you looking at a mop, Adam? What does that have to do with fly tying?
I can make a fly out of that.
That'll wreck some fish.
That mop would
wreck.
would clean up on the South Holston. All right, next video idea. That's coming to you guys later.
I don't really know what I was saying. Hopefully, you guys learned something from this, drew some inspiration. I know I definitely learned a lot, and hopefully, I can apply that to my fly tying. But make sure that you guys go over. Blue Line has been really taking the YouTube stuff seriously. They've got a bunch of videos coming out almost every single week, right?
We've been trying to post one every Friday. At least we have been recently. We've got quite a few that we've got stored up. So hopefully even this winter, we plan to kind of switch more into fly tying and less outside.
Yeah.
But trying to post one every Friday. Hasn't happened every Friday, but it's been close.
Yeah, y'all are killing it, though. There are already some really good fly tying videos you guys have done, and there's going to be definitely a lot more. So if you guys are interested in that and you want to learn and you want to watch some of their stuff, go subscribe to their channel. It's just Blue Line Co. on YouTube.
search that or Google that, whatever, it'll pop up.
Yeah, you're smart enough. You'll figure that out. And yeah, that's gonna do it for us here. I gotta catch a flight at 6 a.m, so
we got some steaks we gotta eat.
We gotta get some steaks on the
put
grill.
some steaks on the grill right now.
It's gonna be good. And we appreciate you guys tuning in. We'll see you guys later. And take it easy.
Mic drop.
See ya.